Good day, friends. Welcome to another Gord's Poetry Show. Number 58, I believe, is the catalogue number. And middle of summer here, Southern Ontario. An unusual rainy day in the midst of a heat wave, which seems to be the entire Northern Hemisphere is having a heat wave. I keep reading articles about it. And it's to do with the jet stream as much as global warming. So maybe somebody will write a poem about the jet stream. Perhaps you know the novels of Helen Dunmore. I believe they're quite popular. What I didn't know was that she's been a poet for many years. And this, her final book, Inside the Wave, is an impressive collection of lyrics about facing that transition. And I'd like to read a few of them. It's got a rather predictable cover of a wave. But, you know, it's color anyway. Look at the whole thing. See, it's a big wave. Oh, yeah, it's a big wave. Shutting the gate. A barefoot girl hugs the wall on tiptoe, her instep arched like a cat's back. Nearby a car revs. She looks at me and smiles like a primary school child. Her friend smokes by the gate, one hand on the wall. Lissom as lilacs, they shake dark curls and watch the car. I say, "Are you girls all right?" And she says, "We don't like the look of them." Two men in the dark of the car, also smoking. She swings the gate shut. They might be my daughters. A little older, I reckon. But those men don't look much like the sons of anyone. It's late, almost 2 a.m. They are both inside the gate, with one shoe strap broken, a packet of cigarettes, brief, lovely dresses. I ask, "Will you be all right?" They don't want to come inside. They just didn't like the gate open when those men were waiting like that, with the engine going and from time to time a rev, so we don't forget. The things that happened at 2 a.m., probably the summer. It's hard to imagine it would be the winter. In praise of the piano. In praise of the piano that slips out of tune, I raise my needle from the dusty record and watch the vinyl turn and turn. In praise of the unrepeatable, the original, the one thought clinging to the one word, I dip my nib into the inkwell. In praise of the only known photograph of your great-grandmother, I hoard film, blackout, developing bath. Oh, needle jumping on dusty vinyl. Oh, letter stuffed in dirty pigeonhole. The fragile, the original, the one word before the blot falls. Finger ballet on the telephone switchboard, the one word that flows from the lips, and the one heart by which it is heard. Unrepeatable, fragile. In praise of all that cleaves to the note, then slips from it, and never stays. The duration. Here they are on the beach where the boy played for 15 summers, before he grew too old for French cricket, shrimping and rock pools. Here is the place where he built his dam year after year. See, the stream still comes down just as it did, and spreads itself on the sand into a dozen channels. How he enlisted them, those splendid spades, those sun-bonneted girls, furiously shoring up the ramparts. Here they are on the beach, just as they were those 15 summers. She has a rough towel ready for him. The boy was always last out of the water. She would rub him down hard, chafe him like a foal up on its legs for an hour and trembling, all angles. She would dry carefully between his toes. Here they are on the beach, the two of them sitting on the same square of mackintosh, the same tartan rug. Quality lasts. There are children in the water and mothers patrolling the sea's edge, calling them back from the danger zone beyond the breakers. How her heart would stab when he went too far out. Once she flustered into the water, shouting until he swam back. He was ashamed of her then, wouldn't speak, wouldn't look at her even. Her skirt was sopped. She had to wring out the hem. She wonders if father remembers. Later, when they've had their sandwiches, she might speak of it. There are hours yet. Thousands, by her reckoning. Hold out your arms. Death, hold out your arms for me. Embrace me. Give me your motherly caress. Through all the suffering, you have not forgotten me. You are the bearded iris that bakes its rhizomes beside the wall. Your scent flushes with loveliness, sherbet, pure iris, lovely and intricate. I am the child who stands by the wall, not much taller than the iris. The sun covers me, the day waits for me in my funny dress. Death, you heap into my arms a basket of unripe damsons, red crisscross straps that button behind me. I don't know about school. My knowledge is for papery bud covers, tall stems and brown bees touching here and there, delicately before a swerve to the sun. Death stoops over me, her long skirts slide. She knows I am shy. Even the puffed sleeves on my white blouse embarrass me. She will pick me up and hold me so no one can see me. I will scrub my hair into hers. There, the iris increases note by note as the wall gives back heat. Death, there's no need to ask. A mother will always lift a child as a rhizome must lift up a flower. So you settle me, my arms twinning, thighs gripping your hips where the swell of you is. As you push back my hair, which could do with a comb, but never mind, you murmur, we're nearly there. That's dated 25 May 2017. And it is, since it says it's her final collection, we can assume something happened not that long afterwards. I'm not aware of that poet on a personal level, but I'm aware of her fame as a novelist. Now, that was May 2017. On August 25/17, according to Harper's Magazine, current issue, John Ashbery's last poem was handwritten at his home in Hudson, New York. That's Harper's this August 2018. The poem is called Climate Correction. So what if there was an attempt to widen the gap? Reel in the scenery. It's unlike us to reel in the difference. We got the room in other hands to exit like a merino ghost. What was I telling you about? Walks in the reeds. Be contumely about it. You need a chaser. In other words, persist, but rather a dense shadow fanned out. Not exactly evil, but you get the point. Yes, John, we get the point. And we wish you a fond farewell and thank you. John Ashbery's last poem, according to Harper's Magazine, handwritten at his home, Hudson, New York, August 25, 17. Back to the land of the living. Priscilla Uppal, her book Sabotage from, I don't know, a couple of years ago, put out by Mansfield Press, 2015. We know Priscilla more as an editor, I believe, of those yearly anthologies. And I make no excuses for not discovering her poetry sooner. I could, but I won't, because there are so many poetry books released every year, and a lot of them are rather good, including this one. Sabotage. A nifty cover, too. Look at that. I like the way the one guy's tripping up the other. Very cute. It's, does poetry trip you up, or is it life? In the psych ward. There are days I imagine you floating away, attached to the end of a black umbrella, lost among the black roaming clouds. There are days I imagine you living solely off scones and clementines, your ribs sticking out like the wiry pickets of your thoughts' fence. There are days I imagine you coughing yourself out of happiness, the last unsalvable vestiges trapped like clogged arteries in your chest. There are days I imagine you marrying a television or outdated exercycle, doling out the day-to-day like a maximum security death sentence. There are days I imagine you reading a biography of your alternate life, where you control the sun's happening by piercing the foil of your pills. There are days I imagine you splitting your pajamas, your long white body in alabaster sculpture for your fellow residents to draw. There are days I imagine you muttering a choir of complaints, baton in hand, the PA system bleating between bars, the arrival of Code Blue. There are days I imagine you climbing the tower of food trays and grey toiletry lockers like a tropical gecko in search of perfect camouflage. There are days I imagine you clicking the computer mouse, silently sending your depression off like the virus it is into the stratosphere. There are days I imagine you kneeling in front of the team of shifty doctors, receiving on your shoulders the cold steel touch of knighthood. There are days I imagine you settling into bed in the afternoon like a little boy tuckered out with play, that those alien notions are pucks rattling about your brain. And there are nights I imagine me looking into your eyes, recognizing the man who used to love me, as our days get shorter, the way the span between holidays is longer, when you have nowhere else to be but here. Leaving Sarajevo. In the rain, the city is shy. Like a jilted lover from a bygone era, it searches the grey streets and cold alleyways, strolling into every coffee shop for one who once was, ignoring the off-color jokes from sunrise to sunset, the laughter of the minarets as mothers warn children against wet hair and ice cubes, the slightest drafts. When it rains for eternity. Forgiveness is not a noun or a verb, but a threat. The clouds descend like luggage. The ancestors drag back to old haunts, pastry shops and leatherwares, the bridge of many names. Drenched but determined, the past runs for cover. This is a city with a sun stuck in its throat. Yes, Sarajevo has seen much suffering. And that's as good an evocation as any. The Amazing Race. Bored atoms leaning against dimensional walls, kicking up a fuss. Bang, bang, countdown to extinction. Cave-dwelling couples copulate. The continents begin bickering. rates of drift rise. If you can get your hands on an accurate map, you are so ahead of the game. Doubly so if you're quick at picking up languages. Or if you know someone who will lend you a boat. The trick is to plunder with purpose, land agricultural punches, haggle into power, and kill Indians. If you can get your hands on sugar or coffee, you are so ahead of the game. This episode, gods spread like lice. Instead of cutting off the plague at the roots, we attempt varieties of cleansing. Next week there will be fewer competitors, but more puzzles and brain teasers. Finally, the arrival of guns. Now the wolves will separate from the lambs. Trade a Christian for a Muslim, trade a hooker for a doctor, trade a rickshaw for a parachute, trade a donkey for a malamute. Trade a prescription for an anthem, trade a watchtower for a bulldozer, trade a poem for a pendant, trade a barstool for a bazooka, trade an orphan for an orgy, trade a human for a city. Watch the stocks rise and fall. If you're feeling homesick, rest assured you are not alone. The vast majority of the planet is nothing but a series of loungers at boarding gates of time. Thrill-seeking finds its own routines. Press a button and old surges reinvent themselves. At this juncture, 4 out of 5 teams are forced to apply for new passports. Average wait times are anywhere from 5 seconds to 5 lifetimes. The world turns according to lists, lists, lists. After much fierce debate and thousands of ritual killings plus other sanctions bashings, the legal definition of a couple is changed. If you can outwit diseases, maximize resources, purge toxins, bank memories, pawn off your undesirables on the locals, and have enough left in reserve to sprint to the finish, you can vanquish your enemies and one day realize your dream of owning a Cadillac or opening a vegan restaurant. After all these legs and pit stops, fights and miscues, our fates forever entwined, how is it we still don't have anything resembling a clue? That's right, happily clueless. I believe Priscilla is a university educator. So let me end with this short poem. Teaching is becoming a dangerous profession. Pull out a book. You might as well be pulling out a grenade. No one seems to recognize what it is or how to use it before it's too late. Priscilla Uppal, Sabotage. Thanks, Priscilla. Now, oh yeah, this year's Griffin Poetry Prize Anthology, 2018. Not as fond of it as I was the finalists from last year. I find a little too much rhetoric, ethnically or gender-based rhetoric that would like to be poetry, but falls rather short of the mark. I will read some of the better ones, however, and let me start with Billy Ray Belcourt from his book This Wound is a World. These are 3 sections from a suite called the Oxford Journal. How does it feel to be an object? You wear your favorite pair of ripped jeans, exposing your brown flesh to the world. This exposure is interpreted as an invitation, compelling a stranger in a centuries-old building to walk up to you, rub your skin, laugh, and walk away. You laugh too, but only because your body needs to escape itself, to identify something of an ontological rupture. This is what it feels like to be almost not exist. You keep surviving anyway. Evocative, no? Another part. I guess these are parts 2, 6, and 8 from the Oxford Journal. You are called wonderfully exotic. A man looks at you, tilts his head, and presses that you are too mixed for him to pinpoint any sort of ethnic belonging. This is a world-threatening feeling, to be so other that you barely exist in a place whose imperial conquests sought the destruction of your people. When you tell him you are native, he doesn't say anything. He lets the silence do the talking, as if he were lamenting the violence that went into producing someone like you. I can tell he has heard a thing or two about us. I have never met a Native American before, he adds, quieter this time. Perhaps speaking in a hushed voice makes you less real. What does one do with the sense of loss that tailgates their body? I've got an answer for that. Part 8. You and your friend are going for coffee after a lecture on Marxist feminist theory, and a white British man nudges you with his shoulder. Your friend goes to grab a table that he was also intending to grab. He gets visibly upset, willfully and passionately, says, "I'm just trying to get away from you people." Your friend is stunned, and in the meantime he turns to say something else under his breath. At this point you confront him and tell him that he is out of line, even though you know that the world is his to claim. He walks away, but throws more words at you. The violence of you people is that it is classic interpellative call, one that pulls you outside of yourself, that seeks to trap you in a flattened form of subjectivity. For him, we were nothing. This is the ebb and flow of everyday life in Oxford. And also Aisha, Sasha, John. I Have to Live is the title of her volume. Here's some short poems. I like it when we give the world to itself, folding it to it like a soft-shelled taco. Hi, God, I said in the photo's caption. It's Aisha. I volunteer. I can't believe I agreed to go to work today. That was so dumb of me. I hate money, and I hate sitting down. I fold in half. Documents destined for the shredder. I leave flat the ones to be scanned into patient charts. I consider how long stickers have rested on the glass, protecting me from potential disease and violence of the people. The first time I came here, I was late. I was scolded. I was bleeding. I barely even cared. Fuck, look, when I start to bleed, I have to eat. He thinks I should be glad because they like the idea of Aisha. I am not the idea of Aisha. I am Aisha. You, I know you, love the idea of Aisha. I am not the idea of Aisha. I am not the idea of Aisha. I am Aisha. Or is it, I don't know, A-I-S-H-A, Aisha? I was born and I lived, swishing fluoride around my mouth with the others. From various classmates, I stole blue scissors, a hamburger sharpener, $10. My mum found the $10. She beat me. I'm sorry. The teacher told me to say to Mandeep. So I said, crying, I'm sorry, Mandeep. The landlord said he lost his phone. The tenant, she said, call it. He said, I did. And then the tenant's boyfriend was like, I called you and a girl picked up and said it was the wrong number. And I'm like, okay, so it was the wrong number. Why are you even telling the guy that? And then her boyfriend was like, yeah, I called it 4 times. She said it was the wrong number. And then I was like, okay, what the fuck? And the tenant was maybe, was your wife? And her boyfriend was like, no, it was a girl. So there's a question there. Also, apparently, the dog likes the cat, but the cat does not like the dog. Well, many slices of life there from Aisha, and there's plenty more. But all in all, a rather disappointing Griffin Poetry Prize anthology this year. Far too much stuff I wasn't that interested in, but that's just me. You know, maybe you would like this sort of avant-gardism pretending to be content. A lot of it, even the introduction by the editor, I find irritating and annoying. Who is the editor? The preface guy? Who is he? Oh, Ian Williams. Ian, try to write properly next time, will you? I don't like the little cartoon bubbles and arrows and stuff. If you can't make yourself comprehensible in paragraphs and sentences, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't be a writer. Anyway, that's my take on it. Nice cover, though. Can you see that? Opinions, what are they? They're not poetry, that's for sure. Opinions are not poetry, but, you know, what can I say? Jonina Kirton, an honest woman. And far too many endorsements from other women, as far as I can see here. It's one of those books of women's poetry where other women think it's wonderful. And I'm not saying it's not good, but a little too much of the she's so wonderful stuff. And if the poetry can't stand on its own without like 45 endorsements from, especially from people that aren't poets, I have to wonder. Jonina Kirton is a prairie-born Métis Icelandic poet, author, and facilitator. She currently lives in Vancouver on the unceded territory of the Salish people. Anyway, I won't hold that against her. Some of the poetry's quite good. Things I learned from my mother. A girl needs a good coat and nice shoes. There are recipes on soup cans. Campbell's knows how to feed a family. If your husband is faithful, a good provider, be grateful. Even if he hits you, it's okay. As long as he is faithful, a good provider. Never wear too much blush or you risk looking like one of those kind of women. It is all right to have sex before marriage, as long as you have him over for dinner first. The recipes can be found on Campbell's soup cans. First time I read that, I thought it was serious, serious condemnation of, the usual stuff. And now I'm starting to think it's quite funny, and that she actually intended it to be funny. This one's called Too, T-O-O. As a child, often considered too loud, too thin, later too fat, hair too long, skin too dark, makeup too much, too independent. The power of 3 letters. Too. Let us know if there is a line. Don't cross it. It is the crack that will break your mother's back. Beauty Tips 101. After my mother died, I wore her nightgown, her wedding ring, having married her story, the shallow lies about beauty, about pancake breasts, the need for padded bras, how small pink nipples were better than mine, my lips too full, hers thin, more appropriate, our hips wide, will always require camouflage. Beauty, a smoke and mirror game that, if played well, lands you the right man. Are we seeing themes here? I think we are. Reconciliation. This is interesting, I must say. How will I reconcile myself? The Icelander and the Métis, the settler and the indigenous, an ally to myself, since birth flung across a chasm. I often wonder, am I to forever be the way across, weak anchors at each end, my spine a flexible deck, load-bearing, and within my cables too much tension, as some try to cross. We all swing wildly in each other's steps without safety nets. The waves of emotion threaten us all, and then there are times that both sides seek to disown, to cut my cords. Let me fall to the rushing waters below. Maybe one day I will just float away, see where the waters take me, but not today. Today I will rebuild this time. No quick fixes, no steel cables or wooden planks, no rust, no rot, no rails necessary, but rather the slow growth of twisted roots from ancient trees, the way across a path made of grandfather, grandmother stones. I will become a self-sustaining structure, gain strength over time, a living root bridge that lasts 500 years. A living root bridge. Husband. Raised on a farm, a father, a mother, 2 brothers, 1 sister. He is not the youngest nor the oldest. Towards the end, in the middle in this story, if he is the cat, I am the mouse who played dead. Well, Jonina Kirton, An Honest Woman. Fairly recent publication. Steve Venright, Toronto poet and writer and editor and unusual character of strange dimensions. He does a lot of things, not just poetry. The least you can do is be magnificent. He's also heavily into hallucinations, I might add. Hallucinations generated by light machines. And that goes right to Brion Gysin, I think, right back. I don't know if there's a direct line of descendancy, but the theme is there. Steve Venright. Other news. In other news, President Kennedy was shot dead today while on his way to a business luncheon in Dallas, Texas. And now here's Andrew with sports. In other news, humans landed on the moon for the first time in history earlier today. The spectacle was marred when an American astronaut, Neil Armstrong, flubbed his lines in front of 120 million television viewers. As he stepped tentatively onto the lunar soil, the distracted NASA employee said it was one small step for man, rather than one small step for a man, as intended. Befuddled viewers must have wondered at the paradox when Armstrong, in the same breath, referred to the occasion as one giant leap for mankind. Better dust off that resume when you get back to Earth, Neil. And now here's Daria with the evening's lottery numbers. In other news, a 47-story steel office tower in New York collapsed at free fall into its own footprint late this afternoon, baffling architects and structural engineers worldwide. Office fires were said to be the cause of the collapse, making it the first such occurrence in history. There were no injuries as the building had already been evacuated. Earlier in the day, 2 other skyscrapers collapsed after being struck by planes. Several thousand people are believed to have perished in that horrific double tragedy. And now over to Ken for a special report on securing your tulip bulbs against pesky squirrels this autumn. Ken? In other news, the wreckage of a flying saucer has been found near Roswell, New Mexico, along with the bodies of several extraterrestrial crew members. One of the diminutive visitors is said to be alive, but rather shaken up by the incidents. I think I might be a bit shaken up too if I found myself stranded in rural New Mexico with no means of... Oh, wait a moment, I'm getting an update. According to US Air Force officials, it was just a weather balloon. Well, isn't that a humorous twist? Any witnesses who might claim they saw something other than a weather balloon are being advised to kindly keep quiet or risk death to themselves and their families. And speaking of weather, here's Kathy with the facts on what we can expect to see falling from the sky. Take it away, Kathy. In other news, to the delight of his followers, Jesus Christ returned to earth today in a blaze of glory. When pressed for a comment, the beloved prophet of the Christian faith said he was glad to be back, but had a lot of work ahead of him. Those who doubted the Saviour's second coming will be hearing a lot of "I told you so's" for the next week or two. And now here's Sapphira with the latest on traffic. In other news, the Toronto Maple Leafs won their 14th Stanley Cup this evening after a drought of nearly 2 centuries when they defeated the San Juan Chicabacras 4-3 in overtime at the Walmart Penitentiary Arena. Sadly for die-hard fans, their celebration will be short-lived as an asteroid struck the Earth just moments later, an event expected to terminate most forms of life on the planet by next Tuesday, or Friday at the latest. And now here's Zorgloxunia 32 with the scoop on this virtual summer's fashion trends. As you can see, Steve has a great sense of surreal humor. He's got a great sense of other things too, if I can just find what I'm looking for. I seem to have misplaced one of my bookmarks. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Here we go, distended aphorisms. There's a time and a place for everything, but it's not now and it's certainly not here. Everyone has to pay the piper, but you might not have to pay him much if he happens to be a non-union. Tomorrow is a new day, but the day after that has been made up of recycled moments you were too busy and too depressed to notice. Intelligence is the ultimate aphrodisiac, but a dab of extract from a civet's anal gland and a nice pair of shoes will usually work just as well. What goes around comes around, but don't expect to get any of it unless you've already got too much. Where there's a will, there's a way, but where there's no will, there's no way you're going to get anything more than a set of commemorative plaques and a busted footstool. Rome wasn't built in a day, but that was before they invented drywall. The Lord works in strange and mysterious ways, but then so do serial killers and plumbers. Laughter is the best medicine, but I'll still take the intravenous Demerol if it's all the same to you. Oh, this is good. Some people try to be tall by cutting off the heads of others, but they're usually apprehended within a few hours. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, but I never believe those travel brochures. Poetry is compensation for the miseries we endure, but that doesn't mean I'm going to drop the lawsuit. To the pessimist, the glass is half empty, and to the optimist, it's half full, but to the paying customer, it's a rip-off no matter how you look at it. A woman's work is never done, but if you do happen to take a break, do you think you could grab me a beer? When the Lord closes a door, he opens a window, and when he closes a window, he opens a door. But if he keeps that up all night, I'll have him evicted. Time heals all wounds, but if I were you, I'd see a doctor just the same. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelette, but you only have to break one to make a baby. Life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, but death is a short certificate written by a sensible fellow with a degree in forensic pathology. Pissing in one's shoes will not keep one's feet warm for long, but it's a surefire way to get out of a bad date. There is no excellent beauty that hath not some strangeness in the proportion. But I'm just saying that to make you feel good. Well, thank you, Steve. That certainly made me feel good. And we'll get back to this some more. There's a very funny glossary of unusual terms here. Words like grenache and gloptodon and euphoria. Well, euphoria is not that unusual. Dymaxion. Absquatulate. And we'll get to that sometime. That's pretty funny too. And also there's an essay, in case you don't understand any of his work, there's an explanatory essay by one Alexandra Porco titled Uncommon Sense Revolution, The World View of Steve Venright. Oh, I'm sure I need all this kind of stuff explained to me. I'm not that intelligent and probably never will be. And maybe that's a good thing. So poetry, once again, the most entertaining form of beautiful language available to man and woman and anyone else in between those two polarities. I know there's quite a few of them now. There was a big article in the Globe this weekend about all the different shades of gender. I'm going to read it and take it seriously very soon. I'm a guy myself, but I've been girls in past lives, so I understand the polarity dance. You shift from one to the other. For me, it's all about a reincarnation. For others, it's about changing in midstream. I often wonder why they do it, but they obviously want to do it, many of them, and nothing will hold them back, not even surgery. And I wish them all well. And the dance of identity goes on. And what's that game where everyone moves around and then somebody blows a whistle and you grab a chair, musical chairs? It's a bit like that. And I prefer just to keep dancing around, put on some Grateful Dead and just keep dancing. And then you don't have to actually stake a claim anywhere. You're just sort of floating through the universe like one of those crazy neutrinos, that go through everything, and thousands of them pass through your thumb every microsecond, that kind of stuff. But people have written about neutrinos, and I've probably read them, but I can't remember now. And I wonder if neutrinos actually don't have any memory, and that's why they don't stay anywhere for more than a microsecond, because they don't actually remember anything. They live in the complete and utter now, and they just keep going. It's just a theory, one of those, theories by those of us that just tell anecdotes and don't know the jargon to get credibility with. Anyway, jargon, credibility, identity, it's all included in poetry. And I look forward to the next one as I look backward to the last one. So long, friends.